Wardley versus Kabayel. I always wanted to see Kabayel versus Usyk, but we're going to get to Usyk in a minute. I'd like to see Wardley versus Kabayel. I'd like to see a Talma versus Hrgovic. I know I've seen people doing predictions of a Talma versus Wardley. I don't see that happening. They're in the same stable. The other thing is, I think it's too early. I think a Talma is 2027. I just want to see him have 2 or 3 more fights that he just keeps raising the level, And Hrgovic, that's a big level raiser. Like, he's still 5th or 6th in the heavyweights. I just don't see him as a massive threat. You know, I don't see him the threat that Dubois has, you know, of knocking a Talma out. So those are 2 fights that I'd love to see at heavyweight. Cruiserweight, I'd love to see Opetaia and Noel Mikhailian. Obviously, I'd love to see Opetaia versus anybody with a belt or Benavidez. I don't see any of that happening. I do see Noel being the guy that takes on Opetaia. At light heavyweight, I'd love to see David Benavidez versus Dmitry Bivol or Beterbiev. I don't really care which one. I think it'll be Bivol because I believe Bivol versus Beterbiev will go for a third. I believe Bivol wins it. I don't see Beterbiev fighting Benavidez off back-to-back losses. Bivol, on the other hand, I mean, undisputed Benavidez versus Bivol. There's a good chance Benavidez get 2 belts at cruiserweight before dropping back down to light heavyweight and taking on Bivol. So there's a good chance we can get that for undisputed. Benavidez still has his belt. Super middleweight, I'd love to see Shiraz versus Mbili. Shiraz has a few mandatories. In fact, that whole division is a bit of a mess. Canelo versus Oisles Iglesias has been mandated. Shiraz versus Mbili, Shiraz versus Pacheco has all been mandated. I feel like if you're Shiraz, you're choosing Pacheco, but Shiraz versus Mbili, I think, is a much better fight than Shiraz versus Pacheco. I don't think Pacheco versus Shiraz is close at the moment. I think Shiraz versus Mbili is a very, very tough fight for both fighters, and I think it's a winnable fight for both fighters. Let's not forget, Shiraz at super middleweight has won 1 fight. He's gone 5 rounds at super middleweight. Mbili's just been in the hardest fight of his life, and he's only going to grow from that. At middleweight's a bit of a mess as well. With not knowing what Yanibek Alimkhanuly is doing in terms of what his VADA tests are doing and what his status is at middleweight, I've made this on the precipice that he keeps his belt and that he's found not guilty. I'd love to see Yanibek versus Lara or Adames. Still, I would love to see him fight either of those 2 guys. Yanibek is somebody that everybody rates really highly, but up until now hasn't fought anyone.